Welcome to Allegedly with Ashli Ford. I'm not law enforcement or an attorney. For the last 2 decades, I've been an advocate, mostly for child victims of sexual abuse. In 2023, I became a podcaster out of, what amounts to a necessity. Injustice has never really sat very well with me, and podcasting has become the most effective way for me to get justice for people. If you're new here, welcome. These podcasts on Patreon are not the same as the Facebook Lives. I started doing Facebook Lives initially in 2023 and later moved to Patreon. I only do Facebook Lives now when I believe information needs to be distributed to the public fast. At some point, I guess people became interested as much in me as they were in my cases. It used to make me really uncomfortable, but I've adjusted to it. I'm a rather reserved and private person. The attention is a little bit hard on me, but I need eyes on the problem. And I found that putting a face on it makes people more invested in a case. Otherwise, they're just reading words on a page or in a story and they don't really get a whole picture. However, at least in this area, it also puts a target on the person that's doing the telling. I opt to be the target because I don't think victims should have to, especially because at least my early cases were almost always about kids. Kids' information is not something that could or should be made public. It's protected. That makes it really hard for people to become invested in a cause. The podcasts here on Patreon include a lot more insight into how I gather and process and verify the information. I also speak about my experiences while I do this work. That really allows people to not only relate to me and my cases, but it lets them see who I am. Something I think is important. If people are being asked to trust me, I think that they should know who I am. The podcast turned into something more akin to what a lighthouse is to boats in troubled waters. At first, it really overwhelmed me. But in the last couple of years, I've adjusted to the volumes of requests that I get for help. I don't charge anything when someone asks for my help. It's entirely free. The only thing I charge for is my Patreon and only the cold case investigations that I typically do them in real time and weekly podcasts. I charge for those. Last year, I racked up as an advocate over 40 years in sentences for child offenders. And I believe I'm on par to triple that number this year, despite the fact that I'm not law enforcement. A lot of people are going to be new here because this case stretches to a new area in New London. If you Google me, you're going to see a series of charges in Norwalk for falsification from 2023. I defended myself pro se in a multiple day trial and was found not guilty. You will also, unfortunately, see a mugshot that I smiled for and a series of very serious charges, mostly felonies. Prior to those, I had absolutely no criminal record. I actually still don't because I haven't been found guilty of anything yet. I disclosed that because I believe in honesty. I can't discuss it further because there is a court-issued gag order. I just want you to be aware of those things so that you can decide how much weight you put into those charges, me, my work. It's all entirely up to you. New people, when they get on my post, are fairly easy to identify because they usually comment on my post asking for proof. Stick around a while. People call me the screenshot queen. The reason they do that is if I'm talking about it, I'm going to be able to prove it. I've been known to tell people not to bother with a cease and desist. I actually collect them in a folder and I keep talking because the First Amendment is a real thing and you can't silence somebody's speech just because you don't like it. If you send me a cease and desist, I'm probably going to talk about it. I usually post them. Listen, the reality is, if you believe I'm lying, you have to sue me. We'll let a judge decide. It always has worked out in my favor in the past. The First Amendment is very hard to argue with. Additionally, despite what people think, screenshots are damning evidence in courts, and I always have those. I started a series a couple of weeks ago about educators who have sketchy allegations and, unfortunately, charges relating to children, and it really opened Pandora's box. New London schools so far, at least from the information available to me, appears to be leading the pack with these allegations. A few days ago, I was made aware of an investigation involving the SRO, the school resource officer. He is a man by the name of Richard Austin Smith. I believe that New London knows him as Austin. Avon, the police department who he previously worked for, they knew him as Richard. That's an immediate red flag for me. It typically indicates someone is running from something tied to their first name. It's not typical for people of his age to all of a sudden switch from their first name to their middle name. It's a little odd. I was told a very, very disturbing story by someone with some serious credibility prior to getting this information about the SRO. I wasn't really sure at the time what to do with it. I don't reveal sources unless a source is found to be lying to me or has harmed a child. These are really long-standing rules. If you don't like them, like, the solution there is just not to talk to me. People believe the things I say because I prove them. It makes me credible, and it allows the sources to remain unnamed and therefore protected. I guess that's really where I want to start. I put up a post asking parents if they were aware of an investigation happening within New London School District. I knew the answer to the question, and I knew the answer was very likely going to be no, because the only people telling me this information, they weren't parents or students. So I asked around to some parents, and nobody could really verify it, which I thought was odd. Again, the credibility of the people that was telling me the information led me to believe it was true. The post triggered a massive response by the public. I understand that new people are sometimes mad about the methods that I use when I do these cases. But listen, guys, I do them for a reason, okay? I wanted to see if any parent was aware, just to verify my suspicion. I also wanted to provide an opportunity for people to see that beacon of light. I wanted them to see that there was this safe platform and this safe place to be able to tell their stories. And it worked overwhelmingly. I believe there's over 500 comments on that post, and not a lot of them are good stories, guys. It's looking real bad. So the story that I get about the SRO, again, from some very credible sources here, tells me that the SRO, who is also a coach, a wrestling coach, took a group of female students to a wrestling event out of town in his personal vehicle. I was told he did not have permission to do that. I was told, in fact, he was told not to do it by the school and, from what I understand, the chief. And he did it anyway. Further complicating matters, I'm told that he personally paid for the hotel room for these mat maids, female mat maids, and I'm told the hotel room was adjoining. Then I'm provided with some additional information suggesting that this SRO is inappropriate with female students, both in and out of school, and that he has made a habit of friending people on Snapchat. For people who don't know what Snapchat is, it's a disappearing messages type of system where you can send pictures and videos and messages back and forth and they disappear. notifies the other person if you like screenshot it. So I'm concerned because if he's doing that, that indicates to me that there's the potential for some grooming here, something that we're going to talk about at length. And I become concerned. If this SRO situation was an isolated event, I would absolutely handle it differently than if it was more widespread or a long-standing issue. I say it all the time that birds of a feather flock together. If you have several people with questionable actions and ethics in a school system, and they are operating in what appears to be an openly prolific manner, then I'm concerned about the culture of that district. Those messages provided me a lot of insight into what the culture is like in this district, and I don't believe that it's good. Anytime I find a situation where there are multiple complaints about multiple educators, I typically find that there are some consequences that trickle down to the culture of the students. In those cases, I often see like excessive bullying, sexual aggression, suicide, self-harm, things like that at a higher concentration than what most schools would deem appropriate. One educator doesn't change the culture of a school. So if it was isolated to the SRO, I wouldn't be overly concerned because sometimes people just suck. I think that one educator could perhaps change the culture of a classroom, but not an entire school. And this appears to be pretty widespread across the district and grades. A series of educators with these allegations would reasonably need a culture of silence and discord and distrust to operate for this long and this prolifically without being detected. So those comments and the messages that post generated offered me all of the insight that I needed to determine if this is something that I needed to act on with grace and understanding, or if I needed to act on it in a more aggressive manner. You know, it seems to me from the comments here that there's this culture in this district that prevents victims from talking to each other and often to their parents. Kids and parents who continue to speak out, from what I can tell from these messages and comments, are typically labeled as problem people. This post, it went wild, and credible allegations, they came out of the woodwork, not only openly, but in my private messages. The fact that former students, going back for what appears to be 30 years, all have similar stories and similar experiences, I believe that there's a serious problem in the culture of the school. Austin Smith, the now former SRO, has been removed from the school and placed back on road patrol. I want to explain that a little bit. An SRO is employed by the police department through a contract with the school. My post mentioned an investigation in the school. That is because I was informed that there were kids being taken from the class and questioned and then told not to discuss it with anyone. Since the post showed me that parents did not know what was going on, it appears that these kids were doing what they were told and they were keeping their mouths shut. It's legal to question kids in the school, but I believe it's a bad faith practice. I personally would have lost my entire mind if it had been my kid. Just for the record, if you're new, I have kids, but they're adults. Questioning kids and telling them that they can't tell anyone is super sketchy behavior. The fact that the kids didn't tell their parents leads me to believe that they're using this culture to hold these kids in a place of silence and where they are afraid to speak out. The fact that they don't feel it necessary to notify parents, something that we're going to talk about at length, leads me to believe that they think that they can do whatever the hell they want. I don't particularly like that. I believe that's an overreach for educators and administrators to reach past a parent's decision and to question a kid in what appears to be a police investigation without even notifying the parent. That's a problem for me. This school released a one call in response to my post. They claimed that my information was inaccurate, and they very carefully worded this statement. If you have to be this measured and this careful and thoughtful with your words, you are either lying, hiding, or protecting something. Probably all of the above. We're going to listen to that one call so that I can show you exactly what I mean.
Good afternoon. This is Brad Romano, Superintendent for New England Local Schools. Earlier today, I became aware of recent discussions on social media regarding an alleged investigation within our school district. I want to take a moment and provide some clarity to this topic. At this time, no school official is actively conducting any investigation. Please know that if there was ever a situation requiring parental communication, we would provide one. And as keeping our families informed is important to us, and we remain committed to an open and transparent communication when it's appropriate to do so.
I want to pause right there. So at this point, he has said that no school official is investigating. And if they felt that the parents needed to be notified, they would have notified you. Being real slick with these words right now. I don't really like how he's doing this, but hey, let's listen to the rest.
We value our partnership with parents and families and encourage you to reach out to the district administration directly if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you for your continued trust and support as we work together to provide a safe and positive learning environment for our students. Again, if you have any questions regarding or any other school matters, please.
Okay. So, I'm going to now play the audio of the subsequent board meeting. I'm going to let you listen to it. It's quite long. I'm going to let you listen to it all the way through. And then we are going to break down where I have some issues with what's going on, especially when we compare it to this one call voicemail that went out by the superintendent.
As to what happened with that.
So, there are certain things that we cannot be fully transparent on because they do involve students who are also minors. But what I will say is that in regards to certain events related to the school, the resource officer, who is also a coach for the school, took a group of students in a personal car on a wrestling trip, was asked not to do so, and as such was asked not to do so prior to that. Some other related items have come up. The school has a shared service contract with the police department to staff the school resource office position. Related to that, the decisions that the school has made, we've worked with Chief Hicks to negotiate through the contract the removal of that particular SRO from the district. Chief Hicks, we have a contract with the department, and he may place another person in the district that we're still working through some of those items. But from there, his employment is a village issue or police department issue. So at this time, he is not in the building.
Okay.
And
Why was that never told to the parents? I think it would not have escalated to the point that it is at right now. I mean, in all honesty, I think that our district looks like one. It's not something that I as a parent want to see. I don't want to see it for our children. On behalf of many of the parents, I think that our safety is our number one concern when it comes to our children. And we want to be assured that, is there another school resource officer? I know you said the police department handles that. Can you tell us if another one is coming in? Who's manning that position right now?
currently, Chief Hicks has been in the building.
Okay,
He's been there every morning when I've dropped my kids off. I was in the building today for mock interviews for the seniors, and Chief Hicks was in the building. So currently, he is manning that position. Whether or not somebody else on the force takes that position or he tries to hire for that position, that's remains to be seen. But at this time, Chief Hicks is in the building.
thank you.
I also just want to state, I don't feel like the
I'm
rumor.
sorry, could you state your name?
Oh, sorry. Brianna Hollinger.
Okay.
And my address is 102 New London Ave.
Okay, thank you.
I don't feel that the rumors would have went as far as they went, or the parents, questionable thoughts about the school would have went on had Mr. Romano not have sent out a voicemail to us stating there was not any type of investigation going on when we were very aware there was.
There was not an investigation going on by the district. The investigation has been going on, as I understand it, by Chief Hicks. The voicemail that Mr. Romano put out was because he was receiving, as well as other administrators, tons of calls inquiring about what was happening at the school because of social media flurry. So he felt it was necessary to try to address these rumors. Again, once the school learned of the matter, it was discussed with Chief Hicks, and the school resource officer was pulled, I don't know that pulled out of the school is the right terminology, but he is an employee of the police department, and as such, what Chief Hicks does from here is his prerogative.
Right, I understand that. I just feel like kind of to piggyback off her, the transparency, if we were just upfront and honest about what was going on, instead of being careful with our words, that could have saved a lot of rumors. It could have saved a lot of parents' feelings and unsurety. I just feel like it was unnecessary. I just want to state that.
Yep. Yes.
Did he have permission from the parents? Aaron Kidd,
Thank you, and
41 Grant Street.
thank you. Thank you, go ahead.
Did he have permission from the parents? Do you know?
I actually do know those details, but I don't feel that it's appropriate to get into those disciplinary details in this kind of forum. What I can say is that he was an agent of the school as he is a boys wrestling coach.
Because now, obviously, we were told that, it's been told that you were fudging the stats for the girls during tournaments. And that's what started all this.
I think we need to be careful of accusations of this nature. I have investigated those accusations and found them to not be true. So I think we need to be careful of.
Well, I was more or less asking as a question, because I know I'm not going to get an answer from either one of them anyhow. So.
I just answered you.
Okay.
Okay. I want you to notice how she says a group of students. She fails to say, from what I understand, that they were all female students, probably because that sounds bad. She also fails to mention this alleged hotel room that he was said to have paid for out of pocket on his own personal dime. Notice she said some other related things came up. She doesn't tell you what they are, and she redirects automatically to this contract for the SRO. It's strange, but it's a telling redirect. She skips over any reference to an investigation, but there clearly was one. These are carefully worded responses. Listen to how slowly she speaks. She clearly says the removal of the SRO from the district. That means it was not voluntary and some type of complaint and investigation happened, which it clearly did. I believe that they clearly and carefully lied in that one call by saying that no one in the district was investigating. The allegation never said who was investigating. It just said there was an investigation going on in the district. This lady appears nervous and measured as hell in this audio. The way she has to keep stopping this board member indicates to me when she isn't present that maybe they run like a little wild with their words and accusations. So I called Chief Hicks and I flat out asked him if there was an investigation into the SRO. He apparently lied because he said there was not. When held to an answer, he claimed that the man had simply moved to road patrol. According to this board member, it was not Smith's choice to leave the SRO position. She says he was removed. However, it also appears that he left his position as a wrestling coach. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. His position as an SRO, like she says, makes him employed through the police department. However, his position as a wrestling coach means that he is also employed through the school. That is likely why this school is being as measured as they are in these words and responses. There's a liability for them if this man committed crimes while working for them. Plain and simple, they could be sued by families of any child who was involved in these allegations if a crime occurred. They skip right over his employment with them as a coach and talk all about this contract with the police. First of all, that was something that nobody asked about. It was a redirect from the beginning. Anytime anyone explains something without being questioned about it, especially when they don't want to answer questions in the first place, you really need to figure out why. In public relations, in court, it's known as a redirect. They clearly admit that there was an investigation. They claim that it was being done by Chief Hicks specifically. So I just kind of want to know, like, hey, big guy, why lie to me? I get that. I guess, why the school lied, but why the police chief? That indicates the stories that I'm hearing are very likely true. Why would the school put out that bullshit one call knowing full well they were not being transparent and then talk about transparency and trust in the one call? That seems crazy to me. People are claiming that both this school and the police refuse to help them. They claim that they make reports and complaints to no avail. They basically claim that the school and the chief are punting these complaints back and forth, both claiming that the other is responsible to investigate and act until parents just give up. This appears to be true. Smith was definitely acting as a coach when this complaint originated. He was not acting as an SRO because he wasn't in the school. He was going to a wrestling meet. I want to explain why that matters. If he was on police time as an SRO when this event happened, he would be investigated by the police. He was acting as a wrestling coach. That's school time. It would initially be investigated by the school and then turned over to the police. It appears from the board meeting that it was investigated by the school initially because she said they received the complaint. They would have to gather enough information to be able to then turn that over to Hicks. That is why I believe that he said no school official is currently doing an investigation. This indicates to me that these actions are at least suspected as being criminal in nature. Do you see how sneaky they're being here? Now, there were some people who came to the defense of this SRO when I posted. They first claimed to me that the school approved him taking the kids, and then they said that the issue was merely related to some fudging of stats. That's absurd, first of all. I didn't believe that from the beginning. Notice the board member, is talking about this and shuts it down and says it was absolutely not true. And, that he definitely punted the question about did the parents give permission. But she did say that the school did not. She was clear about the fact that the school did not give him permission to do it. I don't understand why she then punted the question about did the parents give permission. It seems like a pretty standard question. I want you to notice how vague she is on the details here of what actually happened. Notice that she says she finds out some other related things, but she's not really going into detail. It was, and I say this with complete confidence, very likely that this SRO was communicating with students via Snapchat. Okay, completely and wholly inappropriate. There's absolutely no reason for a police officer, an SRO, a wrestling coach, an adult who isn't related to a child to have a children as Snapchat friends. That's weird. Now, I was on the fence about this initial allegation because, I wanted a little more information. Taking girls in your personal car to meet, for this wrestling meet it's suspect, but it's not necessarily damning. Taking girls in a personal car and paying for their hotel room and adjoining one, from what I've been told, a little bit more suspect, but not necessarily damning. Taking girls in a personal car and paying for their hotel room after being told not to do it by the school, according to this audio, is a very serious problem. For starters, it's considered insubordination for both the school and the police department. Serious consequences there, always requiring an investigation. Taking girls in your personal car and paying for their hotel room after being told not to do it by the school, combined with how he is allegedly interacting with female students on Snapchat, and more concerning about how he interacts with them in person. That is a pattern of very questionable choices, ethics, and moral code. That becomes a problem for me. It's about to be a problem for him as well, because next month, early in April, a new law goes into effect, House Bill 322. It's going to make grooming, something that I believe was happening here, a crime. It also makes it a crime for mandated reporters like teachers, nurses, and the police to not report these matters. And I think that New London is going to run into some serious issues when this law goes into effect. If these allegations are accurate, and I believe that the majority of them are, we have a pattern of what appears to be sexual abuse and a cover-up. If a sex crime happens and you don't report it and I find out about it, I will see to it that you're charged under this new law. People are not oblivious to what's going on, at least not in this town. It's a small town. Everybody seemed to know everything except for this investigation. I don't think you're going to be able to hide stuff anymore because of my posts and podcasts. They provide a light at the end of a very dark and what appears to be perverted tunnel. If you've been a victim in this school district, I'm pleading with you to come forward. They muddied the waters here to make them appear deep, but they're not deep, guys. They're really, really shallow. I navigate them all the time just fine. If they get deep, I can swim. So initially in this podcast, I talked about this information that I was given by a credible source, and it was old information. It was from what appears to be 2003. I, at that point in the podcast that I did initially, refused to name the teacher from that allegation. It was alleged that he was in a car accident and later left the school. I felt very confident in speaking about this because of who provided me with that information initially. The person that provided me this information has standing in the community. They have access to this type of information, and the details that they provided, the supplementary details, they checked out. Lying to me about something like this would absolutely cost them their career and reputation. I believe it to be highly unlikely that this person would lie to me in writing and risk all that. That would be stupid. The Post proved that this story that I didn't even name the teacher in was fairly well known and by multiple generations of people. That's insanity to me, but it happens all the time. People reached out to me and told me the guy's name. I mean, everybody was right on it. See, there was nobody that was wrong on the name. Nobody really knows what to do about it, though. If the police and the board are covering for these offenders, as is being claimed, and they're punting these things back and forth, and I believe that they are, then people are left with no recourse. Telling only makes them a target, and in this small podunk-ass town, for generations. This is a systemic bully tactic to keep people silent. If this was about, say, the multi-million-dollar field, something that everybody wanted me to look into, I really wouldn't care. You know, money is always going to be dirty business, and I don't really feel like sorting that mess out. At the end of the day, the kids got a really nice facility. I'm not really sure how. That was a lot of money, but that's really the problem for an auditor or a forensic accountant. After hearing some of these allegations that I heard, I kind of took a look at this money situation, and the only reason why I would care about money is if I believed that if it was potentially generated by some type of leverage, it's reasonable to see that the police and the school would be protecting themselves from the liability of a civil suit, as is claimed in this case from 2003. But this type of scenario would lead people to having leverage. If that leverage involves someone getting paid or, say, making a donation, then I would have a problem. I want to explain here. It was alleged that this teacher was in a very severe car accident. He was found to have child porn publications, allegedly, underneath his car seat, specifically male child porn, NAMBLA. It was alleged that this information, this porn, was then turned over to the school. The school did some type of investigation according to these allegations and determined that there was also similar material, male child porn, on his school computer. Instead of turning that information over to the police, it has been alleged that they cut a deal with this guy, gave him a good reference, and let him move on to avoid any type of liability. Now, that sounds really crazy, except the person giving me this information is incredibly credible, okay? There is no way this person is risking it all to tell this information and it be a lie. I want you guys to understand that nothing is free, okay? Covering these matters to avoid civil liability is a crime. And I doubt that people are doing something like that for free, because I wouldn't put my ass on the line to cover yours if I did nothing wrong. I don't see people doing that out of sheer loyalty, because in my experience, people are only loyal to themselves, at least first. The story from 2003 is very concerning because it appears that the same culture remains in effect today, but it's getting worse. If this is happening at the very alarming rate that I believe it is, these people would have a lot of leverage on each other, and that could potentially lead to this type of cover-up. If one teacher is doing some sketchy shit, people are going to tell on them. If a teacher is doing some sketchy shit and they know other teachers are doing sketchy shit, they're not likely to report each other. Birds of a feather flock together. This appears to be widespread in this school. There are a lot of teachers named in those public comments. It would be very easy for a school who was trying to maintain this silence to force out any teacher who would stand up and report it, because those teachers are not going to want to risk their license in a bad reference. I have been contacted by some former teachers that suggest that this is something that was happening then and that even happened to them. That would leave this school with a lot of like-minded adults in the building. If those like-minded adults can then convince kids not to talk about things, even something as important as a police interview at school, and they're willing to lie to you about it in a one call and cover it up at a board meeting, abuse could run rampant. You would expect a school experiencing something like that to have kids who are frustrated, suddenly aggressive, overly emotional. The conflict between students would really be fostered by this cone of silence. It appears to me that the issues with the students are very likely related to the adults around them. If a student is being abused by a teacher and they can't tell anyone out of fear or frustration, fear of embarrassment, that aggression, that emotional state is going to play out somewhere. Because they can't exactly direct it at the teacher and they're too afraid to ask anyone for help, it's typically going to be directed at the other students around them, or in some cases, even themselves. When, in these cases, when other students do report it, it appears that there's a lot of bullying that goes on. And in these bullying events, it appears that the offending child is protected. I would only expect to see that if that kid had their own leverage. I'm really concerned because the schools are doing this like stay away CPO type agreement, and it's being signed and agreed to by students when there's like bullying or arguments or fights or allegations. And from what I can tell, the parents are kind of upset because they don't appear to be brought into the loop on that. My issue with that is, kids can't legally sign binding agreements. And I don't necessarily believe these stay away from each other while you're in school trying to get an education is a very good solution. It appears to me that kids from these situations end up just leaving the district to avoid like bullying, or even, according to these allegations, some bullying and abuse by educators. It looks like a student problem on the surface, but I think that the students who are the most aggressive really need to be spoken to, and immediately. That is a sign of something, and I fear it is the product of abuse and the frustration with being silenced about it. There appears to be a lot of self-harm and suicide reports, openly, even in the comments on that post. That's concerning. It's, again, a consequence of something. How did those kids get to that point? It's easy to label these kids as a problem, especially when they're a bully. But I think that we need to take a little closer look here. I think we need to find out why so many kids in this district are acting out, why there are so many events of bullying and self-harm and suicide attempts, and some even successful. I don't think that we're going to be okay with what we find this root cause to be. I think we've very likely already identified it. I'm not really sure why the school felt the need to essentially call me a liar in their one call, but I think it's because they thought they would get away with it. It appears to me that they're used to getting away with a lot. This time they were just wrong. The truth doesn't mind being questioned, and it does not need a carefully worded statement. It also doesn't need to silence and limit people's commentary in a public meeting. I was told that there was a rule in this meeting about like who could speak and what could be spoken about, and that seems a little weird to me. If you've been around for a while, or even if you're new, you'll see that people trash me in posts and comments on my posts all the time. I don't mind. It never really goes well for them. I don't mind being questioned. I don't have to defend myself because my reputation precedes me and people fervently defend me. This information available to me about New London School District leads me to believe that there is some type of systemic abuse. Apparently, from what I can tell, it's stemming from the adults. Something that appears to be flagrant and open. I'm concerned because they were willing to lie in that one call, a recorded call. The reason why that matters so much to me and is bothering me so much is because that unnamed teacher from 20 years ago. I did reach out to him for comment, by the way. He saw it, but he didn't respond. I firmly believe these allegations to be credible. Not only that, I believe the subsequent allegations about the cover-up to also be credible. The person doing this informing is doing it at great risk to themselves. Their reputation and career would be absolutely obliterated if they were lying. I reasonably verified these details, especially the ones indirectly related to the allegation. Things like where you worked, after, personal details like religion and career aspirations. You know, I said earlier after the podcast that people reached out to me with the name, and that leads me to believe, based on the ages and connections, that this information, it's been well known. And that confirmed to me what the original tipster claimed. They claimed that the board knew about it and covered it up to avoid this liability. They also claimed that subsequent board members have been informed about this issue. If that's true, that's a serious problem, and I have no reason to believe that this is a lie. If they allegedly, cut this man a deal and let him move on to avoid the public knowing and the liability that would bring, that is beyond the pale of unacceptable. While this event did take place a long time ago, and people asked me initially, why does this matter? Why does this matter? I don't understand why you talked about this. It was 20 years ago. I talked about it because it offers us insight into how things have gotten to the point that they're at now. You don't just all of a sudden pop up with this many allegations of sexual abuse and physical abuse and bullying and self-harm overnight. That doesn't happen. It's not a reality. This board appears to be practiced in lying to the public to avoid scrutiny and liability. They claim to be transparent, but they're not. They tell you that they give you the information that they believe that you should have, not the information that you believe that you should have. That's a problem. This is my opinion based on the information available to me at this time. My experience in these matters leads me to that opinion. If all of this is true, and I believe that it is, and I can back that up in any court, then New London has a very serious problem here. This is a rare opportunity to bring these things to light so that they can be dealt with properly. I really hope you all take it. I was truly impressed with the turnout at the board meeting. So I played a couple audios for you. I do have some additional ones. I'm not going to play them today, but the latter audio is from an educator in the school commenting on my lack of presence at the board meeting. I want you to understand, if I show up to that board meeting, the focus would be on me. Also, the parents would not feel the need to speak out on their own if they think that I'm there and I'm going to do it for them. The audio of the board being questioned organically by parents is far more valuable than my presence at that meeting. Additionally, sir, you had no intention of allowing me to speak. I'm smart enough to inspire other people in the district to do that. And I believe that my mission was accomplished, in at least my humble opinion. New London, you need to start talking to your kids. This aggression and this culture for these students, it is stemming from somewhere. The allegations against these teachers and these educators and the board, unfathomable. We need to get to the root of this problem. We need to isolate which teachers and which educators are a problem here so that they can be reported to police and removed. If you have an experience with a teacher, particularly something that would be classified as a sex crime, and you were under the age of 18, understand that you can report that crime to police and see action on it all the way until you're 38 years old. If you have a story and you're willing to tell it, I think it's time to do that. I think it's time for people to go to the police departments and the sheriff's office and file these complaints. It is invaluable to allow us to be able to take action. If there are no police complaints and no police records about the allegations into these educators, it makes it very difficult for there to be investigations and for them to be removed and not allowed to move on to other schools secretly while the board, covers their behind. I am always available to listen. You can reach out to me. You can remain anonymous. I really think at this point, it's very, very important for parents to start speaking up. And yes, social media is a great place to speak out. But you also need to show up to things like the council meeting, which happens Monday, I believe. I am going to do my very best to attend that meeting Monday. I think that if you have a story to tell, if you have an experience that is abusive or criminal, it would probably serve a very, very good purpose to show up and tell that story, because they can't shut everybody up. They can silence one person and they can bully people out of the district, but they can't shut everybody up. And the First Amendment guarantees us the right to be able to speak about these things openly and freely on social media. So have the day that you deserve.